What's the one skill that is guaranteed to get you a better job, a happier relationship, and a healthier life? Are you ready to unlock the key to self discovery? It's time to tap into your emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is used all of the time as a catchphrase, and I want to talk a little bit about what emotional intelligence is. At a base level, emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize, understand, and manage our own emotions, and also to recognize, understand, and navigate the emotions of the people around us. By developing our emotional intelligence, we can drastically improve our relationships. We can make better decisions, we can lead a more fulfilling life, and we can get to know ourselves at a deeper level. And we all know that I am all about that. So, there are three main areas of emotional intelligence. The first one is self awareness, knowing what you feel and why you feel it, understanding your own moral compass, being able to recognize the emotions that are triggered in you in a situation, to understand that they're present, but not necessarily react without thinking it through. This brings us into the next part of our awareness of our own emotions. It's being able to manage those emotions as they get triggered. Being in a situation, maybe you're in a situation at work and somebody has annoyed you. Maybe you're in the car and someone's cut you up. Maybe there's something at home, your teenager is acting in a way that is really winding you up. It's being able to understand the knee-jerk emotional responses that you're having and handle these difficult emotions and manage them in a way that doesn't impact your life negatively. We all know people who react constantly all the time without any thought. And maybe that's you, or maybe that's where you have been, or maybe that's something that you're trying to navigate yourself past. It's a natural part of human life if you haven't learned to manage your emotions, but it is absolutely something that you can learn. It is a skill like anything else. And if you learn about it and you put into practice the things that I talk about here, you will be able to navigate your emotions in a much more successful way. When we have an emotional reaction, one of the great things to be able to do is to recognize where they are on a scale. We have the emotions that we would classify as positive, happiness, enthusiasm, joy, and we have the emotions that we would classify as negative, sadness, anger, frustration. We also have high intensity emotions and low intensity emotions. Being able to be in a situation where you have an emotionally charged feeling within you and being able to recognize where is your emotion on the scale. Does it feel positive to you? Does it feel negative? Is it high energy or is it low energy? That will bring you a long way towards self-awareness and being able to manage what is happening emotionally. When you're in this state, you can put yourself into a place where you start to coach yourself. Ask yourself some really important questions. Do you feel empowered? Quite often, emotions run away with us if we feel like our power's being taken away. Ask why. If you don't feel empowered, ask yourself why that's the case. Don't judge. There's no judgment on the emotion here. You're just trying to identify accurately how it is you're feeling. Ask yourself, what made me feel this way? What was I triggered by? That is a massive question to ask yourself, because if you can identify that, you are that much closer to being able to control your emotional state before you get to that situation. Asking yourself these kinds of questions also gives you a distance from the situation. Now, at this point, you're still in the situation. You haven't said anything to anyone. This is an internal thought process that's happening. Or maybe you've walked away from the situation, or the situation's happened and you're reflecting later on in the day. These are still powerful questions to ask yourself, and they will give the correct amount of distance so that you no longer identify that situation as being the emotion. The emotion is a separate thing that you're looking at and investigating. The next part of emotional awareness is empathy, seeking to understand others, being in a similar position of inquiry. When somebody brings something to you that doesn't feel great, learn to be curious instead of reacting with the first emotional thought that you have, pause, create some distance so that your monkey mind can then understand the situation is not the emotion. And ask yourself questions or ask the other person questions like, what made you come to this decision? Or tell me more about that. Ask thoughtful questions, and that allows the other person to understand that they don't need to feel defensive. Because what happens in emotionally charged situations is people have an emotion, they react to the emotion without realizing they've had an emotion. The other person then becomes defensive, throws up their barriers, and then nobody actually has clear communication. Asking the other person some deeply thoughtful, inquiring, curious questions allows them to understand that you're not attacking them, that you'd like to know more, and it will put them in a place where they're being more vulnerable and more open, which in turn will de escalate you, and your emotional responses will become much gentler in the situation. This will help form a much deeper connection. This works whether it's with between you and your children, you and your spouse, you and your colleagues, a stranger on the street. This thought process will slow down your monkey mind and allow you to be aware of emotional states. It will allow you to identify why they've happened, and it will allow you to disconnect from them and navigate the situation in a much more evolved way. It's interesting to know that the part of the brain that deals with empathy and emotions and emotional regulation is actually the very last part of the brain to form. Quite often, we're not taught about dealing with our emotions when we're in school. We're not quite often taught about it at home. So sometimes there are going to be situations where you find yourself not understanding that a situation has only happened because two or more people are reacting to their emotions without creating any distance from them. The next step to progressing your emotional intelligence is to focus on the relationships that you have, to focus on your own emotional intelligence, that of other people, your emotional awareness, but also to be aware of non-verbal cues. And this works both ways. So the first way to learn this skill is to start watching other people. What are they saying with their facial expressions, with their body language? What is it that you're picking up on? Because sometimes someone might say something that outwardly feels like there is absolutely nothing antagonistic in that, but something about that has really wound you up. Quite often, that will be because there is a lack of congruence between the way their body language is, the way their face is, and the words that they've said. So maybe they've said the thing that they think they should say, but their body language tells you that that's not what they really mean. And when we pick up on that, we tend to get quite defensive. When you learn these skills, you can learn to navigate that in a more sensitive way. You can see that what somebody has said doesn't necessarily align with the way they're presenting. You can learn to ask gentle questions to allow them to really come into their own truth rather than judging them for the lack of congruence and attacking them for it, which is something that as human beings we do quite often. When you've learned to become of other people's non-verbal cues, it's time to start learning your own. And this is definitely something that is at a level of mastery when it comes to emotional intelligence. Now, I consider myself to be an excellent communicator. Definitely. I would say I have mastered communication. And I would say that really boldly because I've worked on it very, very hard. However, I wear my heart on my sleeve. I wear my emotional reactions on my face. And I'm very aware of that. Now, have I learned to change that? Yes, in some situations, I am able to control what happens in my face when I'm in a social situation. There are other times where I don't change what happens on my face because I'm quite comfortable with what that's conveying. But usually, my body language and what I say on my face will match the words that I'm using because I am extremely authentic and I really say what I mean 98% of the time. A lot of people don't even have an awareness that the words that they're saying are secondary to the way they present. Learning to be sensitive in stressful situations can help you to de escalate it. If you see that somebody is becoming triggered or becoming stressed in a situation, or you can feel it in yourself, you can feel yourself responding in a certain way, and actually you think about, what is the end game? What do I want out of this? If you're in a situation and you can learn to separate yourself from your emotional trigger and remind yourself, at the end of this meeting, I want this outcome. At the end of this conversation, I want to hug my child. You know, if you can get yourself to that point, you can then start to do things like sensitively using humor to elevate the energy in a situation. Rather than having dull, harsh reactions, or if you notice that you're having them and that's not the outcome that you want, if you can inject laughter into a situation, that can be a game changer. The reason for that is laughter releases happy hormones, it reduces our stress, it reduces our anxiety, and it makes everybody feel a little more comfortable to then bring down their barriers, stop being so reactive, and come back to a place of a joint goal. If you can separate yourself from your emotional reactions and from the emotional reactions of the people around you, you will be well on your way to a mastery of emotional intelligence, and your life will be so much happier, so much more peaceful, so much less drama, so much less conflict. And if you can start to see conflict as an opportunity to learn, to be curious, to ask questions, whether it's internal or external, and see conflict as an opportunity to grow as a human being, you also then react differently to conflict, because you no longer throw up all your barriers, although it might still feel uncomfortable. You see conflict and you think, okay, what can I learn from this? And it slows everything down, gives you some distance, and then you can start to navigate conflict in a way that is healthy. We can't remove conflict from our life. Conflict is a necessary part of being a human being in this society. But what we can do is we can change the way we manage it. We can change the way we compose ourselves. We can change the way we connect to other people. And we can definitely change the way we react emotionally to that situation. Leave a comment below and let me know what you thought about any of these aspects of emotional intelligence. Maybe you have a different definition. There are many very valid definitions of emotional intelligence. It's a really important conversation to be had. And I love sharing these insights with you guys. I appreciate you so much. Have a great day.